Bandwidth for changelog is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com, and we're hosted on Linode servers. Head to linode.com/changelog. This episode is brought to you by Linode, our cloud server of choice. Everything we do here at changelog is hosted on Linode servers. Pick a plan, pick a distro, and pick a location, and in seconds, deploy your virtual server. Drool-worthy hardware, SSD cloud storage, 40 gigabit network, Intel E5 processors, simple, easy control panel, 9 data centers, 3 regions, anywhere in the world they've got you covered. Head to linode.com/changelog and get $20 in hosting credit. This episode is brought to you by TopTal. TopTal is the best way to hire freelance talent to scale your team. Work with top freelance software developers, designers, and finance experts from all over the world. Or if you're a developer, designer, or finance expert looking to freelance with top companies like JP Morgan, Airbnb, or Pfizer, head to toptal.com to learn more. That's TOPTAL.com. Tell them we sent you. For a more personal introduction, email me, adam@changelog.com. From Changelog Media, you're listening to The Changelog, a podcast featuring the hackers, leaders, and innovators of open source. I'm Adam Stacoviak, editor-in-chief of Changelog. This episode kicks off our mini-series from the busy Expo Hall floor of OSCON. Over the next several weeks, we'll be releasing new episodes featuring conversations with speakers from OSCON that you won't want to miss. On this episode, Jared and I talk with Pam Selle about serverless. Special thanks to our friends at O'Reilly for inviting us to OSCON. It was an honor being there.
So, Pam Selle, welcome back to the Changelog.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
Nice to see you all here.
I think you go to lots of conferences, because we go to very few conferences, but every one we go to,
You're there.
I think you're there. Is that fair? Do you go to a lot of conferences?
You know, I've been taking a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Since I've been focusing on, what I've been trying to do is to go to a couple big ones. So I'm here this week at OSCON, and I'll be at Google I/O.
Nice.
And I might be at Strange Loop later this year.
Okay.
I have the privilege of I'm volunteered to review some proposals, and I can tell you all should go. It's going to be a really good conference.
Strange Loop?
Mm-hmm.
I've been telling this guy for years.
You all, have you been
We
ever?
have not been to Strange Loop, but
my
every year I
goodness.
say, we should go to Strange Loop this year.
I've been twice. I love it.
Yeah, it's an audio show, Adam. Adam's nodding his head in agreement.
I'm nodding my head because at the same time I'm nodding, I'm trying to find out who runs Strange Loop because I forget the person's name.
Oh, Alex?
Alex.
Yeah, Alex is kind of, he's the public face. There's many people on the Strange Loop team, but yeah, he's the public face.
So we try to go, because we try to run a sustainable business, we try to go in a way that helps us, I guess, gain some revenue to get there, so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
And so, like, with OSCON, that's how we're here,
yeah, which makes sense with a big sponsor, like with O'Reilly.
We have family, we have mortgages, so we gotta try to, like, go places, which kind of sucks in a way because, like, I want to go to a lot more places and we wish we could, but we both have, like, lives, I guess, schedules, so to speak.
Unlike you, Pam, who has no life. Just goes to conferences whenever you want.
We just can't go on a whim. But yes, Strange Loop, we would love to be there. It's an awesome conference, and I wish we can go.
Yeah.
So Alex, if you're listening to this,
yeah, if Alex hears that, or someone who
email us again,
someone
else from the team. But yeah, you might not be the first person that I've heard from that they can be hard to get a hold of. So they just have so much on their plate, and there's also that I believe they have a few other conferences that co-locate with them. So Racket, which is a Lisp, they
Elm
co-locate who?
Isn't Elm Conf like the day before?
Elm Conf, you're right. And Papers We Love, I think, co-located. Like they really try to do a lot to, since they go through all this work to have all this, conference space that these smaller communities that might not, especially like,
That's
these
cool.
edge functional conferences, how RacketConf, I had a friend who went to RacketConf one year when I was there, and he said he had so much fun because it was such a, Racket in terms of a Lisp community has a lot of academics, but it's also really small in terms of who comes to RacketConf, but very interesting.
So you're here to talk about the serverless revolution. In fact, you have a
Serverless
T-shirt on
revolution,
that says
yes.
join the serverless revolution. So what is that, and why should we sign up? Why should we join?
Yeah. So the serverless revolution is, I feel like, is the thing. If you already know about it, the people who know what it is say, well, yes, this is definitely going to be the next big thing. It's serverless right now is where I think is where you wish 3 years ago that you knew everything about containers. Serverless is that thing right now, as terms of the hotness.
It's not the big thing. It's the next big thing.
Yeah,
right.
It's really
ground floor.
I think it might because it's been so. Serverless is kind of, and this is, I'll talk about this in my talk, but especially since this probably comes out after it, right?
Yeah.
But so you can watch the video on YouTube.
There you go. Do you have the URL for us?
No, I will
That would
later.
be cool.
But so when you watch the talk, I cover that serverless really is this. First of all, we'll get it out of the way. It's a terrible name.
Yes.
Everyone agrees. No one said it was a great name.
A lot of people never even
there
get
are
past
servers.
the name.
It's obviously there are servers. Just like the cloud is not made up of water vapor.
Actual clouds. Yeah.
So like we got over it for the cloud. We can get over it with serverless.
It took us a while.
It took us a while, but now
it'll take us a little
people
bit.
don't even people don't even like you say the cloud, and even you can talk to even people in the grocery
clear,
store
this
and they know
still
what that
involves
means.
servers.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but
So you're
the
saying
thing
they're
is
servers.
that
Sorry.
so serverless is the idea of the general category of doing software development so that you don't have to care about servers. And so there's two different sections of it. There's serverless compute, there's serverless computing, and which is functions as a service, and then there's backend as a service. So when you do things like use Firebase or using, let's say, PubNub, which is a real-time PubSub service. That's backend as a service. But functions as a service is what I focus on, and what the serverless revolution is really centered around is this AWS Lambda and its friends. AWS Lambda and friends coming to Nickelodeon.
Yeah, it does sound like a cartoon.
So
Not a great cartoon.
So AWS Lambda is, and it's also, I think this is another reason why people have such a hard time wrapping their head around it, is because it first starts as an AWS service.
Right.
And God knows if anyone knows what anything on AWS does until you use it.
We were just talking with
But yeah.
Justin at AWS.
Yeah.
That they just have so many services
They have so many services
that it's hard to even know what they all do.
I was watching, so they have a big conference every year, reInvent, and when I was watching the live stream in December, I had like a little cheat sheet of what the logos meant open in another tab, because darn if I know what they are.
They all have the Amazon logo in there or something like it, right?
They just don't mean anything. And they just throw them on slides and talk
It's
about.
a shame too, because they got so much good stuff.
Confusing.
Yeah, I think they're
But
rallying
borderline,
around.
like,
It's getting
Microsoft
better.
naming
They're
level,
working
too.
on making their design better.
Right.
But the thing is, I don't really care that they're not that good at design. They make great cloud infrastructure, and it's good stuff.
Right.
So this started with AWS Lambda,
Yeah.
which is write a function but run it on their,
Right.
execute it there.
So instead of running code on a physical server that you have, under your desk, a fake server, a virtual server on someone's public cloud, or inside a fake virtual server that is actually a container on someone's cloud, you upload your code literally as a zip file, or there's ways you can do that, to storage on one of these cloud providers, and then when an event that you've a trigger, when you set up a trigger, when that comes into that cloud provider, it'll run your code. And behind the scenes, what happens is it gets, spun up in a container, and then it runs that code in the container,
They're doing
and
all
those
that stuff
containers
for
get
you that you used to
cycled.
be doing
and
yourself.
and all that stuff, all that stuff will happen without you doing anything. I mean, you should know how it works, because you should know what your infrastructure is doing. But ultimately, the whole point is that it's managing your infrastructure for you. And the end game of it, so it's revolutionary in a couple ways, of just in terms of the technology that makes it possible is really interesting. We wouldn't have functions as a service without containers. That's what makes it possible.
Sure.
But the other, the main things that make it really revolutionary in terms from a user perspective and from a cloud provider perspective are that it's the way it's run. So it's not a persistent service. It is run in response to events. So that's the one big thing. And the other big thing is that it's metered. That's how you bill. It's metered in 100 milliseconds. So think about just how different that is from a consistent server model. I mean, if you talk to
hourly billing, things like that, you mean?
Yeah, that billing. Yeah. Because I mean, that's completely different than when, especially, when your mom and pop cloud provider, which there's plenty of, not these, there's plenty of cloud providers that aren't this big public cloud. The way they get into this business is they just sell you the same server that you would have put in your own data center, but as, a virtual one in their data center. So there is revolutionary because there was technology that enabled it, but over time it's kind of, when you look at the distance between those 2 points, it's actually not that big a difference in terms of the distance between these 2 points and the distance between virtualization and containers and running code in response to events.
Yeah.
I think it feels to me as that it's a much bigger step.
I would say it's definitely more of a departure. I would ask, so revolutionary, in terms of different, I agree. In terms of what does that mean? So, revolutionarily better or just different?
Well, that depends. So to me, I find that topic very exciting, and I'm okay with being in that space. I do think it's revolutionary because you also, similar is happening right now. So how containers are now in the orchestration stage of, okay, great, we have containers.
Now what do we do with them?
Now what do we do with them? And we have, our buddy Kubernetes doing stuff and running at the ship's helm.
Right.
And because Kubernetes means ship's captain or whatever. And so I think that's the thing that's going to end up being revolutionary in terms of how people architect, because when you architect around that your code only runs in response to triggers and your infrastructure scales theoretically horizontally, just because of the kind of service you're running, right? That's going to have to reflect in your architecture somehow. I mean, for one very obvious thing of where do you put your state?
Right.
It's got to go somewhere.
Where does it go?
Yeah, where does it go? That's a good question.
Oh.
It depends.
We don't know.
You can put it in we use a database. It's kind of where we always put, for us, in terms of some of the serverless architectures we run, at IOPipe, we use a database. We use Elasticsearch. We store data in the things that are meant to store data, and we run code on things that run code.
So let's take me through the process here. So an event triggers, your function, your code executes on a AWS or other provider who provides functions as a service.
Right.
Infrastructure that spins up a container. All the things that are necessary for that code to execute appropriately has to connect to a data store. And then do its thing, and then maybe put stuff back. If you're going to persist it, it's got to maybe pull stuff out, put stuff in, and then spin down again.
Well, so think about that. So it depends, because the other thing is that, and that's why I think serverless is a terrible name. Functions as a service, even though it's everything as a service, that's actually not that bad of a name.
It makes you think about it the right way.
Because, it makes you think about it the right way, is that it's not, your function's not going to do everything. It's going to do this one granular thing. So, for example, you might have one function that gets something from the database and another function that modifies something from the database. Those are very different things.
Sure.
And so you might have two separate jobs that do it. You might even, instead of writing directly to if you have other things that have to happen, maybe you don't write directly to the database, maybe you write to a queue. And then that queue can be a trigger or something like a kinesis stream.
Right.
That can be a trigger for another Lambda. But see, as I describe it, you can see, I think that's the thing of when you think about, so you asked what's revolutionary, is you end up with, it's very easy to end up with a Rube Goldberg machine made of functions as a service.
Right.
I think that's super interesting. I mean, there's a reason why I think Rube Goldberg machines are interesting.
Right. They're intellectually stimulating, but is there a better way of doing it? Right. There's more efficient or direct ways of getting this done in a Rube Goldberg machine.
Sure, but at what cost as well? And so that's the other thing, is that running and at what scale.
When we come back from the break, we talk about the environmental impact of functions as a service and how the serverless architecture removes the need for a traditional always-on server system. We also talk about how serverless is being used in production today and where it's going in the future. Stick around. This episode of the Changelog is brought to you by our friends at Microsoft and Azure Open Dev Conference, their upcoming no-cost live virtual conference that's focused on showcasing open source technologies on Azure. Engineers are looking to bring more of the open source tools they know and love to the cloud, but often need a grounding on what to look out for and what to expect. The fastest way to learn is to see live demonstrations and get time to Q&A with experts in the field. Microsoft is providing this at no cost. It's a virtual event, which means you don't have to travel anywhere. Reserve your spot today. Head to azure.com/opendev. That's azure.com/opendev to register for this free live event from Microsoft. It is on June 21st, 2017. And now back to the show.
I also think about that functions as a service are really cool from an environmental standpoint in terms of when we think about the usage of infrastructure, that if I'm building what I want to be a standard scalable infrastructure, I don't want my load to ever go over 50% maybe, because I want to be able to handle a lot more traffic so that I don't fall over.
Right.
All that water and energy and all of it, it's just getting wasted, and I'm paying for it. So it's bad for the environment, it's bad for my wallet. So if I use something where things are run in a scalable, I want to use the word, less waste. I want to use the word elastic, but then that's also been stolen by
Elastic
AWS
Cat.
too, and for
got it
other
all.
projects.
elastic makes sense because it
does make
rubber
sense.
bands.
Yeah,
it
I mean, that's
stretches
why
and
we
then
use it.
Condenses.
Yeah,
So
Why don't you
go
call it
ahead.
stretchy services?
It's a stretchy.
Isn't there a superhero that's
Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah, there you go.
Now you have a mascot.
There you go.
He's the leader of the serverless revolution, Stretch Armstrong.
Or what was wasn't there a Fantastic Four?
Yeah, probably.
I can't recall the name, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that person.
I'm not either.
Sorry.
The
Sorry.
Incredibles, the
Yeah,
mom
okay.
would stretch.
She was.
Yeah. I'm more that person than.
Yeah, me
the
too.
other
I don't know her name either, though.
one. Me neither. Mom? I don't know.
Yeah, she was mom.
Mom. The Incredibles mom. Mrs. Incredibles.
That's
there
right.
you go, Mrs. Incredibles. Take us to like a practical sense. Where does it stand today? We're talking not really theoretically, but we're talking big picture about functions as a service. But like, what are people using it for? Are there people taking this to production? Is it still like you said,
definitely.
it's ground floor? But
No, I really wouldn't put it at ground floor. It's almost like in the bell curve, we're still on the left side, and we haven't reached the top. But
Okay.
we are definitely not at the bottom of the hill.
okay, so we're making our way up the hill.
We're going up the hill on the bell curve. So AWS was released, AWS Lambda, not AWS, AWS Lambda was released in 2014, in late 2014 for reInvent. And we're talking right now in 2017. So in computer land,
It's a long
a
time.
lot of time has passed.
Right.
Much time has passed. And there's actually quite a few people running this
The
in production.
olden days.
Yeah. And the other thing that's
3
kind
years
of,
ago.
and I think this is one of the things that makes serverless compute hard to understand, is that it's a cloud offering, and there's actually lots of ways to use it. So especially when it's something so general as runs code in response to a trigger. Like there's actually lots of
Execute
ways
your
to do
code.
that. So iRobot of your friendly Roomba, they are run on serverless. So that's one of the things. It's pretty as popular in the IoT because because IoT is event driven.
Yeah, that makes sense. In that case, for sure.
Sensors send
This
signals
happens
and do
then
something.
it responds.
And then for something for more of a web development idea, you can run an API because you can integrate with, so like in Google Cloud, you can use HTTP triggers, or in AWS Lambda, there's API Gateway. And so you can run an API by saying, when I get a request, then run this function and send this response. There's so many. There's even, I think one of my most favorite recent ones is in operations, which this is interesting because this is, although, when I think about this probably would have caused more problems, but when there was the great S3 outage earlier this year,
Yeah.
and did you all hear about what like I read the report.
I
It's
did,
interesting.
but I've lost it now. I feel like there was. Yeah, tell me.
Sure. So what happened was someone deleted something that they shouldn't, and it caused because of a command line argument.
Yeah, that's right. It was a command line
it was a
typo.
command line argument,
Yep.
so it was a human error. I hope that person's okay.
Had a very bad day.
They had a very bad day, and
They deleted their bash history. I didn't do that.
Hug ops, but they
Pepcac.
it then caused this cascading failure. But so one thing that you could do with AWS Lambda is anything that you put, or something like it, is anything you can put in a playbook, you could probably run with functions as a service. If I think about that, because that's why it actually is a good name, the functions as a service, because it's a function. It's a list of instructions. Do something. So I've heard of people using it for operations task of when if I delete this route, then these other things should happen. And using functions as a service to run that script for you in your infra.
Seems really like a good fit. IoT makes sense, but also bots because they're completely event driven.
For Box?
Bots.
Oh,
like
bots.
Any sort of.
Yeah. Oh, no,
Like
for sure. That's actually one of the
Bots.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Robots. The internet robots.
I was gonna say
Let's
that
make it clear.
your
bots.
accent may have thrown it off a little bit.
Accent.
Bots.
I have no
Bots.
accent.
Because she was like bots.
It confused me.
Anyways, sorry.
I thought I said
had to
it.
put that out there because I was
Clearly.
thinking it.
You
No,
thought
because it's event driven.
That's
Right.
all
Yeah,
good.
and
Bots.
that's one that's really common if you look for a serverless tutorial, which we have one on
That's awesome.
GitHub at iopipe/workshop, I believe, and
they use bots.
you can make a Doge bot for Slack.
Nice.
So you give it some words and it'll make a Doge meme for you.
Nice.
And it's a little intro to it's a little 40-minute do a tutorial to practice a thing workshop.
I like it. Do
Yeah.
a tutorial to practice a thing.
Well, I mean, that's how you learn stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about this as much as we want, but if you, like...
That's why I say getting practical. Like, how do you actually get started?
You got to
and do
actually
that
touch
kind of
it,
thing?
yeah. And really, especially because on all the... Pretty much, well, all the three big public clouds of being AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, they all have really generous free tiers. So the pricing for functions as services in the number of invocations and in compute time being a calculation based on how much memory you said you want your function to use. So
Okay.
it's a very fancy way of saying duration, but
How long it takes,
How long
given
it
a
takes.
memory constraint.
yeah. And so you get charged so much money per whatever for 100 milliseconds.
Can you run a Slack bot
meters.
for free on all those?
Yeah, I would say
Nice.
that because you
Unless it's
get
getting used constantly or something.
unless it's absolutely constantly, I think it would be a challenge. Like maybe your Giphy instance maybe could hit the hit the limit, but you get 1 million invocations on AWS, 2 million free on Google Cloud, 1 million on
a monthly
Azure,
basis?
Wow.
and it renews monthly. Your free grant.
That'd be a popular bot.
What was the
Yeah.
what was the entry point for you for this? Like what?
For me,
At what point,
it was
not so
actually
much-
when I started working for the company I'm working for now. I work with IOPipe where we're building monitoring for serverless.
Gotcha.
So I came from before that. I was doing some consulting, and I was working actually before the consulting. I was working on a large scale API gateway for a major company.
That's when we talked to you last. You were working.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
yeah.
things move fast in the software
Yeah, I
industry.
told you. We talked 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
everything changes.
Do you have a good aha moment story for us?
Like when I thought
when you
when I
really
got this,
got it,
and I
you
was
were like, "This is really
oh.
awesome."
You know, I think I almost started having it before I ended up working with IOPipe. When I first spoke with the founders, I was speaking to one of the founders, and she was talking about this thing that was working on and was building, and involved the cloud, and this thing that I think I'd heard of, but I hadn't done anything with, and I barely understood it. And that's the kind of thing where it's you either don't understand it because it's pointless to understand it, or it's because it's something they probably should sort out, and it will become part of what you generally know. And I feel like that's what ended up happening. Was I kind of had an inkling even when I first heard it that this was going to be a big thing. And then when I started, and especially once we started we spend a lot of time at the company talking to teams who are using serverless in production and the kind of problems that they're using it on, the kind of production challenges they run into. But all of them ultimately had such amazing stories about the transition that what they saw when they went from persistent infrastructure to what is that? I heard someone say that it's not even, that running functions as a service is not even immutable infrastructure, it's untouchable infrastructure. That it runs, you use it and it's gone. So it's untouchable infrastructure.
Huh.
But moving to that, the difference that they saw in their cost, in their the time they spent on random operations tasks, it just was blown out of the water. That it was just a huge change for them, and I think that's one of the reasons why people might hear this trend and they're like, why does everyone care so much? Which is also a fair reaction to something when people are like super into something.
Yeah.
But I would argue that this is a big deal, and I mean there's a good reason why they're excited, because this, they have that lived experience where they've seen that transition and seen what it looks like on the other side of it.
Yeah, we're where we're at in tech because they consistently lowered barrier to entry, and that's what this does.
This is lowering it one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
I think so. I mean, because it really is, and some of the operational challenges are really interesting, but for your average run-of-the-mill developer too, it's really great. I mean, in terms of the barrier between having some code to run a backend and having it run and not paying very much money for it, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
The bot you did for Memberful to Slack could have easily been this.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually think I probably will try it, write a Slack bot for us, because I have like 1 or 2 ideas for our Slack.
Nice.
Where I could write it as part of our main website and just could always be there because the website's always there, or I could try it as a serverless little thing, and it's small enough that I could move it if I wanted to. But I think it's a good case for trying it out and seeing if there's a happy path there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Pam, thanks so much for talking to us about the serverless revolution. By the way, longtime listeners of the show may remember Pam from a crossover episode we did back in September 11th, 2015. That's episode 173 of the Changelog. We had the entire Turing Incomplete. I think it was the entire. There was 3 of you. You guys had 4, though, didn't you?
We had 4. All
right.
I
So
can remember who didn't make it. It might have been Len.
75%. It was Len. 75% of the Turing Incomplete cast on the
75%.
Changelog. And that show has since retired. But
it could come back.
I hear
We're probably
inklings.
coming back for it.
There are
We're thinking
whisperings
about it.
that Turing Incomplete may
We will see.
return. So follow. Are you Pamasaur?
Yeah, Pamasaur on
Follow
Twitter.
Pamasaur on Twitter. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good game.
Nice. Good game.
All right, thanks for tuning in to the Changelog. We love talking with people like Pam who help make the open source community thrive. If you enjoyed this show, make sure you share it with a friend. Thanks to our sponsors, Linode, TopTal, and Microsoft with their Azure Open Dev Conference. Also, thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner. Head to fastly.com to learn more. We host everything we do on Linode servers. Head to linode.com/changelog. Check them out, support the show. The Changelog is hosted by myself, Adam Stacoviak, and Jared Santo. It's edited by Jonathan Youngblood, and the awesome music you've been hearing is produced by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. You can find more episodes like this at changelog.com or by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.